This video is sponsored by Dashlane.
What the?
I'm not really into cringe humor, mostly because when it's done poorly, it's not even funny, much more embarrassing or even malicious. However, this guy, Hot Dog Guy, has some of the funniest and most memorable moments in Gumball because they're embarrassing. So let's cover the trifecta of cringe in today's verses: the hug versus the awkwardness versus the cringe. Unlike all of my other verses where I break them down into their beginnings, middles, and ends, for story purposes, it makes more sense to talk about these in full, considering that the awkwardness acknowledges the events in the hug and the cringe acknowledges the events in the awkwardness. So let's peel the orange chronologically. But before we do that, let's talk about the most cringeworthy thing: knowing about password managers and still using the same password. Dashlane saves your passwords, so you don't have to remember a bunch of complex passwords to different websites, and it's as easy as a click to retrieve them. In addition, Dashlane generates strong and complex passwords for you, so you don't have to pray that your one strong password is good enough. They can also hold your personal information, such as your ID and credit card information. So why Dashlane over other password managers? Their dark web monitoring, personal VPN, and quick notifications if you're ever breached. Try Dashlane for free on your first device by heading over to www.dashlane.com/alphaj. Then if you want to use the VPN plus Dashlane across all of your devices, use the code ALPHAJ to get 10% off. And if your password is ALPHAJ as a furry, please change it. Getting started with the hug, the episode begins with Gumball basically being outed by Darwin as being predictable. You will see here in many ways that Gumball would try to outsmart Darwin, only for Darwin to reaffirm the fact that he knows what Gumball is going to do next. So this episode would have been somewhere in the middle of season 4, and I wanted to check out other Gumball and Darwin sort of centric episodes, and I noticed that Darwin is super detached from the wackiness of Gumball in this episode. You'd have other episodes in this season alone, such as The Detective, The Upgrade, and The Girlfriend, where Darwin can be just as wacky and not as reasonable as Gumball. But then you'd have episodes such as The Roots, where he acts like this. It's a big shift from his season 1 sort of character archetype, which was more naive and attached to Gumball's antics. I suppose it'd make for a full circle when a dumber version of Darwin made its way into seasons 5 and 6. The quick nature of Gumball's attempts to break the predictive mold and Darwin's quick responses really do embody what I love about Gumball as a whole.
I forgive you.
For what?
For trying to pinch me after saying, bet you didn't see this coming.
To break the mold, Gumball goes up to this hot dog guy and gives him a big hug, pretending to know him, seeing that they've never fully met, and Darwin wouldn't have been able to predict that specifically. However, that would be the catalyst to all of the cringe-worthy moments that would happen afterwards. With a very proud looking face, he does meet up with the hot dog guy again. If you've never met Hot Dog Guy, this is the main reason he's known within the amazing world of Gumball. He just has some extraordinarily bad chemistry with the blue cat, and considering that this blue cat is the focus throughout this episode, we get to see his denial in action. I just love how much effort they put into these scenes, because each one is different and unique in their own way, even if some of them are built off of the same premise. Their variations in how much more awkward they get is really what sells the Gumball and Hot Dog Guy episodes. Darwin kind of takes a back seat, pretty much being the meta version of a very bored viewer who has seen this before. Works well in the story, but I don't really have much to say about him.
Hey, dude.
No, dude is too friendly. Abort, abort.
What? Okay.
There's so much I enjoy about these scenes, so where to begin? Firstly, the point of view of Gumball that's just like slightly over his head, it never gets old in this episode. It gives off that effect of Hot Dog Guy's perspective well, so that when we see Gumball panicking mentally, it just brings his contribution to a 10. Not only that, but the show made sure to portray Hot Dog Guy as just as awkward as when he's with Gumball. This isn't Gumball just being awkward and Hot Dog Guy being normal. This is what I mean about their bad chemistry. Sure, Gumball and Hot Dog Guy have friends who they aren't this outstandingly cringe-worthy with, but it's something about them that makes them this way. Hopefully we'll find out. Lastly, this dance. It'll come back, and each time it gets worse and worse. For me, why this works is because it's genuinely awkward for both parties involved. There doesn't seem to be any malice here, just genuine confusion on what to do in this situation. It's more, hey, let's laugh at them because of the situation rather than, hey, let's laugh at them because they're naturally that that way, and we would see that as cringeworthy, which a lot of cringe humor on the internet can come across as. Not all, but way too much. They bump into each other again, and I want to put a pin right here. You see this face? It reminds me of one of my favorite jokes in Gumball.
Well, at least there's no crowbar.
This face had me dead. It's just a sheer look of disbelief that we don't see much of. We'll see it in the spoon as well. This face is never not going to be funny, and with the hot dog guy doing it as well, that's just gravy. They exchange another awkward encounter, and what I like about this one, that the first two didn't do, is that now hot dog guy is joining in on the awkwardness, doing some cringeworthy stuff on his own. It gets to the point where both of these guys have had enough and want to fix the situation immediately. However, they prove to not really understand what can fix the situation like this.
What you doing here?
Me? I was just in here, counting brooms.
Counting brooms?
Yeah.
Although we don't know much about him as far as his origins, what we do know is he's been around since season 1, and mostly he's kind of just been in the school cafeteria, like in episodes such as the 3rd, the dress, and the 8th. He'd acknowledge his role on the sidelines in the episode The Extras. However, it leads me to this line of reasoning. He's seen here talking to Claire Cooper. Now, what makes this important is that we aren't sure how they're associated. Sure, they're friends, but are they in the same grade? If they are in the same classes, it opens up the validity of the claim stated in Claire's first episode, The Others, an episode also in season 4, just earlier than this. In that episode, Gumball and Darwin claim that they only see people in their class, within their grade. And when Anais tells them to open their eyes and really look, we see people like Claire. So that leads me to my question. How could Gumball and Darwin not have seen Claire before, but they could see Hot Dog Guy? You could make the counter argument that they never saw Hot Dog Guy, just we saw Hot Dog Guy, but they never acknowledged him until The Extras. I'm not sure. It leads into a lunch scene where Hot Dog Guy pays for Gumball's meal, which at this point, you cannot just not call him a friend in public. You'd look super lame. This solidifies their maybe friendship to the public, which makes breaking things off in the future much harder. However, we'd get to the true reason this episode is called The Hug. While Gumball the show would have a talent for taking something small and creating an adventure out of it easily,
Sorry, anonymous blue stranger. It was you or me.
the standoff, the recollection of events while they're walking, the slight tease into the hug, it's just so wacky. It's what I enjoy about Gumball. It's so dramatic that it's ridiculous. They both have this self-contained battle of who's going to make the first move, but both have the same amount of naivety and guilt towards being the bad guy. It's just that Gumball historically doesn't make the first move to stop things. It's perfect. They go on to be solely rude so that the other person would break things off so that they wouldn't feel bad about the eventual split. It boils up until Gumball accidentally lets slip that he doesn't care much for Hot Dog Guy's presence. They reach a mutual understanding, which is weirdly wholesome for what this episode builds up. It ends with Gumball and Hot Dog Guy scheming against Darwin, who I weirdly think deserves it in this episode. And that was the hug. If they only stopped crossing paths here, it'd be an open and shut story about an unpleasant first impression. However, they'd meet up with each other in The Awkwardness. In this episode, you kind of get what you got in The Hug, just with a little more character development. So pardon if this is a little shorter than the other two recaps. So it starts off with a song about ketchup. I suppose if you've seen a lot of my reviews, I don't really have much to say or praise about the songs that they composed originally. I've never actually been blown away with Gumball's music composition. I found it to work, but that's what it's supposed to do. So it's not really something outstanding. Maybe I'd have to give it time, but it's not like the SpongeBob music where I can point out songs and what scene made those songs memorable. However, here in this episode, The Awkwardness, I can't even say that the song here is even good. It seems pretty unnecessary. I mean, sure, it's in Gumball's nature to do this, but to what result? It's clear you can do this and still get to the point of bumping into Hot Dog Guy. Pretty weird. So, awkward moment numero uno of many awkward moments within the episode, the phone. So to show you exactly what I mean about getting pretty much what you got in The Hug, but less, let me explain. Like The Hug, this is built off of a very simple premise, except in this case, there's actually less going on. Here, Gumball is just going to the mall to buy ketchup. I don't know if that's a mall trip for me exactly, but I don't live in Elmore, so I don't want to judge. Now look at the other episode, The Hug. That one is about Gumball trying to prove something, totally separate from Hot Dog Guy. There's no motivation here except for the motivation we got within the other episode, just played out more. Whereas there, it was about them not knowing each other and trying to get away from each other. Here, it's that they know each other, and they still are trying to get away from each other. It's the same premise really. Why I don't enjoy it here as much as there is because it strips away any real plot and just puts them together. It seems too regular. Yes, the inner Gumball fan in me appreciates the character pairing and just having new episodes, sure, but that doesn't mean this ranks highly for me. However, taking away my main gripe here, there are things I enjoy about this episode. I love how they brought back the camera angle of Gumball being from a very high angle. The bus scene wasn't too bad, and I understood the premise even though that weird guy, who seems to be named Leonard, didn't make things better.
Well, we hit a bump and,
This episode has a lot of funny moments within it. I just wish that it didn't seem like the leftover jokes that couldn't fit within the last story. They'd reach the elevator and both attempt to press it, creating another awkward moment. However, this time Gumball and Hot Dog Guy would acknowledge that this is an awkward moment and would try to fix the situation. Remind you of a certain episode I just talked about? However, considering that this is Gumball, it gets worse.
Death time!
I know some people aren't into eye-related pain or slapstick, however I felt like it was handled here pretty well. It's not on screen long enough for you to cringe, especially considering the other cringe-worthy stuff in this episode.
So, where are you going anyway?
I was just getting some ketchup for my delicious hot dog.
However, getting to the ketchup-related part, that's what all of this is built up for? Basically the joke that Gumball is eating a hot dog? Even though they already did this in the hug? It seems a little unnecessary for a near-minute song. We get to another part that confuses me. So in an effort to make things less awkward, Gumball and Hot Dog Guy both agree to exchange their most personal and embarrassing secrets in the hopes that they know each other so well and it wouldn't be awkward anymore. The payoff to this is that someone was on the other side of the elevator door, Tobias, and they would cut back to a very annoyed Gumball and Hot Dog Guy, which if you watch Gumball, you would think that this would lead into them beating up Tobias or something, leading to a bond maybe, but nope, more awkwardness. I know that's what the episode name is, but the hug wasn't just 11 minutes of hugging. They build up to it. So Gumball finally gets to the part of the mall that has ketchup, and plays a pretty neat rule of threes build up that leads into him seeing Hot Dog Guy again. They run in the same direction willingly, and you would think one of them would have the thought to run in a different direction, but they can't because the story wouldn't work that way, would it? Seems pretty forced to me. We then get to this guy.
You have the right to return any product within 20 days. You do not have to buy anything, but anything you do buy can be added to your reward card. You have the right to redeem unlimited coupons. If you do not have a coupon, you may be provided with one by the store.
That's all you really need to know. It's a simple chase. Gumball has done better. On its own merits, it gets the job done. It doesn't seem that compelling when they've been running all throughout this episode, and it's clear that the mall guy is no true threat. What could have improved this scene a ton is not making it about the ketchup, but making it about some internal struggle or motivation, like with the hug. I am saying that it should take things from the hug, just not 100% of the episode, more like 70/80% with an actual underlying story. That's all I'm saying. It ends with them still being awkward, and that was the awkwardness. So as you see, the hug and the awkwardness build up to the cringe.
Not gonna happen.
So like in the awkwardness, the cringe starts off with Gumball being very happy and naturally himself. However, like I said in the awkwardness, I felt the opening song was very unnecessary to get to the point of meeting Hot Dog Guy, and then going through the motions of being awkward. All this episode does is prove that, as they get into meeting Hot Dog Guy very quickly. Although all the initial jokes revolve around them both wanting to use the bathroom, which by the way, why does a school like that only have one bathroom? They aren't all the same joke, it's varied enough to work. Gumball blows his gum on Hot Dog Guy, he throws it into the fourth dimension, which is why we don't see where it goes, and they fight over the bathroom. I guess if you felt that this seems pretty dumb because they can just use the bathrooms at different times, I don't know what to tell you. It didn't really bother me personally, that logic is pretty solid. It's a pretty neat montage that ends as so.
What the? Ow! You like my new shoes?
It is then that they acknowledge their awkwardness and make a plan to stop it. This is where the title of the episode, The Cringe, comes from. However, as the episode goes on, I do have a few concerns. However, they come along later in the episode. Their plan so far is just to make things awkward. So much so that their previous interactions seem normal. It goes awry pretty early, however, I do want to focus on this shower scene.
Just realize you are very much wearing shorts. It's like showing up for a costume party when everyone else is dressed for a black tie event.
More like turned up to a black tie event only wearing a black tie.
Considering that this is a season 6 episode, I still found this to be pretty funny. I love the way that Gumball delivered that line, coming to the realization that he should have been more specific. I also love the little turn to the audience when Hot Dog Guy makes a quick comment. We also don't see many parts of the school besides classrooms, cafeterias, Principal Brown's office, and the hallways, which granted is 80% of the school, but it's nice to switch things up a bit. I'm sure we could have had a great episode revolving around the pool area. We haven't. Lastly, Banana Joe's reaction to Gumball and Hot Dog Guy fighting is probably my favorite reaction to anything on this show. Okay, second, as usual, Hot Dog Guy is super resistant to doing any of Gumball's crazy ideas, but seeing as this episode doesn't really switch up his character much, you can probably predict that he's going to come around to Gumball's ideas anyway. Gumball continues to act increasingly erratic, leading to Hot Dog Guy to be the voice of reason. It's a neat dynamic, if I didn't pretty much already see that in the previous episode. In fact, it's so similar that at least this episode, Gumball has an actual phone to go to, unlike the elevator scene in the last episode. They auditioned for a talent show that appears to be national. I remember them bringing up Elmore's Got Talent, but is Elmore a nation, a town, a world, or is it the non-judgmental part of the void and basically everything around that? I don't know, either way, it's just okay. This is when the episode sort of takes what it did in the awkwardness and just makes less jokes about the same outcome. Mind you, I don't want to be misinterpreted. It's not the fact that they do cringeworthy humor, it's about the quality of it. For the most part, throughout these 3 episodes, I enjoy it, and there's still more to come that I enjoy. However, that isn't to say that there isn't a few duds here and there. In fact, let's get around to it so I can get it out of the way.
You have experienced a cringe level of 100,000 DJ. That's the equivalent of hearing 100,000 dad jokes all at once.
One thing about season 6, if I could and probably should do, like a top 7 problems with season 6, if you guys want, let me know in the comments below. It's jokes like this. I understand that it's appealing to a different demographic than mine, but I feel like seasons 1 and 4 would word this joke in a way that doesn't feel like it'll be dated. Season 6 has this aura that it's going to be dated. Being the meta and modern show is one thing, but standing on your style and making it timeless is another. And jokes like that are not going to cut it. However, getting the jokes that do,
You can call me Dad? You're a teenager, and you need a male role model in your life. You are...
What I enjoy about this is it really does turn the tides on Hot Dog Guy, who honestly kind of underperforms in the reactions department next to Gumball. Which isn't just my bias, hear me out. Part of Gumball's reactions is seeing his entire face and the way that he moves. With Hot Dog Guy, because of his shades hiding his reaction most of the time, and his body movements, he's kind of limited in the way that he can react. Which makes it challenging, I bet, to animate a great reaction out of him, without going severely off model for a joke, which I'm glad that they don't do for him. It goes through a memory flashback, which is weird because it's about to go through another flashback just moments after, but I do want to bring something up. In my top 9 best animation changes in Gumball video, I brought up that The Cringe is one of my favorites. The origin as to how it got here is because Gumball and Hot Dog Guy realize that they have a past. For some reason, they have a history dating back to toddler days, and both of them repress whatever memories that occurred then, but they have a chemistry between them. This is what I mean about Gumball being both a comedic, episodic show, but retaining this natural sense of continuity, and giving nuggets of information that contribute to the timeline and lore of Gumball. It's kind of the ideal situation for me, because I can talk about the episodes I enjoy without having to give a bunch of context for the situation. In fact, if I were just covering The Cringe by itself, I would only need to explain everything leading up to this point in about a few sentences. In fact, in that memory flashback we see later, they reference all of the other memories that led up to this situation. From the bus situation in the awkwardness, to the tent scene in the hug, these memories here are pretty awkward. Nothing more awkward than the stuff like the bus situation or the dancing hug, but with the creative animation change and the progression in their relationship, this feels like it can stand on its own merits as its own episode. Much better than the awkwardness. I also just enjoy the designs of everyone. The only part I would improve is...
Remembering this only makes things a million times worse! I thought we needed to fight fire with fire, but it only makes more
Again, under the radar humor, meta humor, fourth wall jokes, and similes. These are not all of the jokes that Gumball does. It is, or at least was, a genuinely funny show, and this way of simplifying the humor, it ruins it in some aspects. So rather than confronting these memories, they do more than suppress them. They erase them. Which, wow, it's not as amazing as the money, but it definitely goes the extra mile.
And this isn't awkward. No. What?
Blah 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 status quo, and that was The Cringe. Out of all of them, I'd say The Hug, The Cringe, and The Awkwardness, in that order, is how I would rank them. I love what The Hug did. I felt like it captured the charm of why these episodes exist the most naturally, so it performed the best in my eyes. The Awkwardness felt like it was going through the motions, and didn't have enough factors to make me feel like it could have stood on its own. The Cringe, while really missing that early Gumball charm, had that progression in their character dynamic that separates it from the other two, which I appreciate. I really do like how the Amazing World of Gumball has a solid grasp on using a wide variety of characters and making them matter. It actually reminds me of another versus I did recently, the Pizza versus the Faith. Click here to check it out. Special thanks to the supporters of September, and until next time, take care. Alpha out.